Every year, AIA Pennsylvania identifies an extraordinary older building and celebrates it with the 50-year Timeless Building Award. This year's award goes to one of Pennsylvania's oldest and most influential public buildings, one having a 134-year record of continuous service. But history and longevity are not what made this building quintessentially Pittsburgh. It enjoyed that status on day one. Upon opening in 1888, it was the iconic pride of Pittsburgh, then the boisterously booming heart of our nation's technological might. But its influence goes far beyond Pittsburgh, extending to public architecture across North America. Of course, we are talking about Henry Hobson Richardson's Allegheny County Courthouse. This is the second year that the Timeless Building Award goes to a venerable civic icon. Last year, we honored the Philadelphia Museum of Art. We noted how the museum's pivotal position anchored a bold urban planning move, the Champs-Élysées-like Benjamin Franklin Parkway linking it diagonally with Philadelphia's City Hall. Like the Allegheny County Courthouse, Philadelphia City Hall enjoys a long, continuous service. Its 1871 design is older than its Pittsburgh counterpart, but the building is also younger, as it took until 1901 to complete. The story of the Allegheny County Courthouse is deeply intertwined with that of Pittsburgh's Golden Triangle. It was the county's third courthouse, replacing an unremarkable 1836 Greek Revival building, which overlooked downtown from a natural promontory, Grant's Hill. That building had proven vulnerable to the corrosive effects of coal pollution. As its dressed limestone fell victim to filth and soot, elements of the facades and the cornices crumbled off. The coup de grace was the fire of 1882. There would need to be a new Allegheny County Courthouse.
It is worth considering Pennsylvania's two big urban centers as the new courthouse's wider context. In the 1880s, both cities were thriving coal and railroad powerhouses. But when it came to industry, Pittsburgh had the upper hand, nearly monopolizing the indispensable ingredient, steel. By then, Philadelphia was 200 years old and had acquired heavy industry only after playing on the world stage as a center of learning, an international shipping port, and the cradle of the American Revolution. Pittsburgh, in contrast, was a rough-and-tumble upstart whose reason for being was entirely industrial. One can only imagine Pittsburgh's eagerness to catch up with its more cultivated cousin, Philadelphia. That can be seen in its robber baron's penchant for cultural philanthropy. So the sudden need for a new courthouse offered the opportunity for competitive civic one-upsmanship. As a baseline in that contest, it is interesting to compare the obvious physical parallels between the Allegheny County Courthouse and Philadelphia's City Hall. Both occupy full city blocks, necessitating large central courtyards for light and ventilation. Both have massive towers, proclaiming civic supremacy, but the settings are very different. Philadelphia's street grid sprawls across a large flat landscape, with the tall human-made landmark compensating for nature's lack of topography. Pittsburgh, in contrast, has what historian Martin Arendt calls unruly topography. An exception is the Golden Triangle's relatively small floodplain, whose eastern boundary was marked by Grant's Hill. This once prominent landform was gradually lowered to accommodate the expanding street grid. Sited on this altered topography, the courthouse's tower helped match the visual prominence of its hilltop predecessor.
Whether or not fueled by rivalry, the desire for an architectural masterpiece can be seen in the decision to run an invitational design competition. The sponsors took it seriously. 4 out-of-town finalists were each offered a respectable honorarium, $2,500, or around $75,000 in 2021 dollars. Conspicuously, one of them was John Ord, who collaborated with John MacArthur on Philadelphia's City Hall before eventually succeeding him. The selection committee's evident logic would be familiar to any contemporary architect. Experience with a given building counts for a lot. Indeed, 2 other contestants, William Boyington and Elijah Myers, also brought substantial public building experience. Meanwhile, H. Richardson was at the table only because another architect had stepped aside in his favor. A surprise move that pivoted American architecture forever. The brilliance of Richardson's design is further highlighted if one thinks again of Philadelphia City Hall. The latter's cornerstone was placed by President Grant, and its design is very much a creature of the Civil War era. With relatively simplistic spatial organization, it exaggerated the eclectic French Second Empire style, encrusting itself with classical orders and carvings. But by the 1880s, American architecture was quickly taking on more sophistication. Steel, such as from Pittsburgh, now formed the hulls of ships, compound steam engines, and screw propellers. These technologies radically reduced the transatlantic crossing time, and American architects flocked to Europe to learn from its examples. The more ambitious of them, H. Richardson included, would study at Paris's prestigious École des Beaux-Arts.
L'École's influence on the Allegheny County Courthouse is subtle but profound, accounting for the building's extraordinary clarity, spatial choreography, and functional efficiency. Being called before justice can be one of life's most traumatic transactions. To this difficult purpose, Richardson brought unprecedented light, transparency, dignity, and humanity. If coal, steam, and steel brought French state-of-the-art design savvy, it also brought the very stuff of which the courthouse is made. The burly texture of its stony walls was hailed as a brilliant response to Pittsburgh's brawny industrial dynamism. Ironically, this consummately Pittsburghian character was achieved by transporting via rail from Massachusetts prefabricated blocks of that state's prized native granite. Although the commissioners chose Richardson's design for its brilliant plan and functionality, architectural history remembers it mostly for initiating a profound late 19th century shift in America's stylistic tastes. For Richardson, Pittsburgh's notorious air quality presented the opportunity to propose a new aesthetic. He set the classical orders aside to make a building whose very massing, texture, and heft would carry the day. He argued that dressed stone and traditional ornamentation would quickly fall prey to the soot and fumes that had so disfigured the prior courthouse. What's more, arguably, Pittsburgh's air was often so thick that only weight, height, and massing would be perceptible. Richardson's primary references were the relatively plain medieval Romanesque buildings that he'd seen in France. But he did not hesitate to fuse this model with other influences. To these he added unprecedented scale and rustication. Most notably, the profound originality of his approach was singularly his and can only be described as Richardsonian Romanesque, much as one cannot refer to Frank Gehry's work without invoking his name. The public embraced this new style as singularly American, emblematic of a country that was as solid, robust, and self-confident as Richardson himself. This new style would be imitated across the United States and Canada. His break with academic classicism sparked a succession of distinctly American architects, most notably Louis Sullivan and Frank Lloyd Wright, thereby paving the way towards modernism in America.
From a 20th century perspective, it is a mark of the building's timelessness that the layering of space, complex staircases, and boldly articulated fenestration create an interior topography that has proven itself an appealing place for many different uses. Recently renewed, the building performs superbly for the county's evolving functions. As the courthouse has aged and undergone renewal, it projects strength without hubris. It appeals equally to those who have little to do with county business, particularly with the courtyard serving as a dramatic venue for events such as weddings.
One of the purposes of the 50-year Timeless Award is to draw attention to works of architecture that are often overlooked. Despite its obvious glories, civic purpose, and meticulous restoration, the Allegheny County Courthouse is such a building. No longer a feature of Pittsburgh's skyline, it sits near the Golden Triangle's periphery along the elevated I-579 expressway. As a result, and quite unlike Philadelphia City Hall, it no longer figures large in the public imagination. But for any history-minded architect, it should be the first place of pilgrimage upon arrival in Pittsburgh.